And hey there, fans. Welcome to Blank as a Fart. It's Wednesday. We're
Yes, it is.
live on YouTube, which has been much kinder to us than Twitch was.
Mm-hmm.
And we are here with the original series finale. We are 30 episodes in, ladies and gentlemen. And,
How did we get here?
you know, this was all my idea, I guess.
I blame
But I
you.
give you I give you credit for sticking it out like you promised. I know it probably wasn't easy for you.
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey, and we're not done yet. We're just at a waypoint here, gassing up the tank a little bit. But before we get underway, something we haven't done in a few weeks, wanted to give a quick shout out to a friend of the show, Domer, who is responsible for our theme music. The name of that song is Big Old Dead. That's from the self-titled album that he has available on iTunes, Spotify, probably YouTube as well, anywhere you can get digital music. I have a physical copy in my closet.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got in on the ground floor. I'm not sure if those are still for sale somewhere though. Maybe Discogs. Check it out. Anyway, this is the last episode of the original series. David Lynch takes the helm again. And what was it you said in the pre-show, Ian?
I said it was, for me, it was an exercise in tedium.
Exercise and tedium. Well, we see things a little differently here. So you know how I tend to watch every episode twice for prep on the show. I watched this one three times.
Oh, wow.
The first time, I watch it for like just watching it through. And then when I did that this time, I immediately watched it again. I was really taken in by it. It was like this is the episode I remember the most distinctly. This is to me what this show is all about. Like the last 20 minutes of the show are what like that's the hook of it for me is just like this exploration of realms beyond our understanding, and like it's the only thing I've ever seen that genuinely felt like a dream translated into art. It just like it felt like I was walking around inside someone else's dream. And it affected me the same way 2 days ago that it did the first time I saw it. I was just it was a piece of art that I never really understood how to classify or how to place, and I still don't.
I mean, I could see how this would be very memorable
Hmm.
when you were young. I mean, if I had saw it when I was young, it'd probably stick in my mind as something very weird and out of the ordinary that I'd never seen before.
Hmm.
Just me watching it now, it's just very conflicting and difficult and silly, and
I don't, I'm not suggesting that it's not silly in places. It's always been silly in places. But there's a mood for me that he's able to strike that there's not a lot of other stuff that takes me to that kind of place.
it's interesting because I think what I'm saying is, I mean, I realize that this episode in particular goes for a much more darker tone,
Hmm.
obviously, than the last few episodes. But I think the swing is a miss. I find the dark stuff really silly and just goofy and not believable. I don't know. It was just a really tough episode for me to watch. I don't I don't know.
Well,
I can't really.
we'll
I
get
feel
to it.
bad. I feel bad that I'm going to shit all over this episode.
No, it's contrasting perspectives. That's what we're here for.
I get. I guess what I'm saying, it'd be a pretty big nostalgia hit if I had watched this. I think, and I think I would
Yeah.
have bought into the whole aura of the show way more. but being
Had it
so
been unique
detached,
to you 30 years ago,
yeah,
yeah.
so detached from it, and seeing so many things attempt this type of stuff way better, it's just a very, I don't know, it's just rough for me.
I get you. You know, there's an evolution that occurs in this sort of thing. You have to frame it through that lens of this was on network television in 1991. And yeah, today in this day and age, it looks like a art school film project. But back then, it was somebody's art school film project on network TV
Right.
in 1991, which was pretty revolutionary. So let's get to the recap, shall we?
Let's do it.
We start at the sheriff's station in the immediate aftermath of the chaos at the pageant. Andy and Lucy are safe in each other's arms. They discuss the events of the evening, and Lucy starts to voice a few of her anxieties regarding her pregnancy, like what would happen if they were stuck in an elevator and the power suddenly went out and she went into labor. You know, normal stuff like that. Andy vows to stand by her in any unfortunate scenario, quote, in front of God and everybody. The two share a passionate kiss and simultaneously declare their love for each other.
It's a cute way to open it.
Yeah,
Intimate scene.
I mean, we kind of just descend from here, don't we? I mean, spoiler alert to those who haven't watched, this is the only happy ending you get in this episode. So let's get it out of the way right away, huh?
I mean, kind of happy. There's definitely a foreboding looming over
Yeah,
this scene.
but
Yes,
Andy and Lucy seem outside of that. They seem kind of in like this a little bit of a bubble outside of what's going on in the rest of Twin Peaks and the surrounding woods.
sure.
So it's interesting to like see them be the ones who remain relatively unscathed by all the darkness in the town.
Cool.
So it's nice to see that with at least a couple of characters. In the conference room, Cooper and Hawk stare intently at the petroglyph on the chalkboard, which we now know to be the map to the Black Lodge. However, they don't seem to be able to read said map just yet. An agitated Harry shows up, frustrated that his deputies haven't been able to track down Wyndham Earle or Annie, but Cooper correctly assumes that the only way they will find them is by following the petroglyph map. Cooper mutters out loud, naming random symbols on the board and circling back to the familiar phrase, "Fire walk with me." Pete bursts into the room, claiming that the log lady stole his truck and sped off toward the woods. We, of course, know that this was Earl in disguise, which apparently Cooper knows too, going so far as to state that the real log lady will be arriving in 1 minute. The mention of the woods seems to spur some recognition in Cooper and Harry, the latter of whom suddenly remembers a circle of 12 sycamore trees surrounding a pond in the middle of Ghostwood Forest, an area known as Glastonbury Grove. Hawk chimes in that that's the same area where he found the bloody towel and the torn pages from Laura's diary, and Cooper points out the origin of the name, which is the rumored burial place of King Arthur in England. After 53 seconds have passed, there is a knock at the door, and 7 seconds later, Hawk declares it's the log lady.
Mm-hmm.
I timed it. It was dead on. She enters with a jar of the oil that her husband found in the middle of the forest all those years ago, which he told her was, quote, an opening to a gateway. Cooper opens the jar and shares a sniff with Truman, and they both recall the mention of scorched motor oil from Dr. Jacoby on the night Leland killed Jacques Renault. Good thing they just happened to have Ronna Pulaski around so Cooper can make her smell the oil and relive the worst night of her life for a few seconds, confirming she smelled the same thing on the night that Laura Palmer died. Woof. Talk about shoehorning.
I mean, yeah.
That was something that Lynch wrote into the script himself, was Ronette Pulaski's appearance. That was not part of the original script. So there
Good
were a
times.
lot of changes he made. We'll go over those in post show.
Oh, I'm sure.
He didn't get a writer's credit for this episode, you'll notice, but he definitely took a hatchet to a lot of it, especially the third act. In the darkened forest, Pete's powder blue Dodge pulls up to the side of a dirt road so Wyndham Earl can introduce himself to Annie and violently force her to look at Pete's trout in the back of the truck. 12 rainbow trout, to be exact.
Yeah, what was that about? Like, there's the 12 trees and then the 12
Uh,
rainbow trout.
there were 12 knights that sat at the round table.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a lot of it that ties to Arthurian legend.
All of a
Like,
sudden, or have I missing a thing from the very fucking beginning?
no, it's the 12 trees, Glastonbury, like that's
Just this
all
episode.
relatively new to this episode
Okay.
and the last. I mean, you've seen like there are the 12 trees in the
Yeah.
petroglyph if you
Yeah,
count
yeah.
them, but I don't think anybody counted them before, you know, any of that. Uh, Annie appears to enter some sort of trance as Earl pulls her into the ring of sycamore trees. And as they venture. Oh, whoop, I skipped a part here. Annie defiantly dares Earl to go ahead and kill her, but he has other plans in mind. Annie reverts back to her faith and prays out loud. This was from Proverbs, I think. I looked it up, but I've forgotten. I didn't make a note. As Earl drags her through the forest, eventually finding their way to Glastonbury Grove. Annie appears to enter some sort of trance as Earl pulls her into the ring of sycamore trees. And as they venture around the side of the small pond, a large set of red drapes fades in from nothingness. The drapes part, and Earl and Annie enter, and the drapes fade away as quickly as they appeared. Uh, any kind
Yeah,
of
Wyndham Earl.
symbolism here? Wyndham Earl.
I just Wyndham Earl continue to befuddles me as as a villain, and ultimately proves me right because how this episode plays out. But uh, the whole like with the flashlight, the way he was, it's just like what the fuck, dude. I don't know. The whole I like the through the back of the truck scene, the back of the window, but just
Mm-hmm.
his acting is so I don't know. I just can't get into it.
It's over the top by modern standards, for sure. Um, yeah, just the whole the manic villain is really just kind of yeah, it's kind of a passe trope, and it's he leaned heavy into it, especially these last two episodes where like Earl is supposedly deteriorating more rapidly. But you know,
Would have
we
been
don't
better
have
if he
to
was
see
still
much more
dressed
of
up
that, do
as
we?
Log Lady too.
Oh yeah, especially the backwards talking scenes. The action moves to Ed and Nadine's place, where Ed and Norma seem to be in a fun and flirtatious mood. Kind of odd for Norma, considering her younger sister was just kidnapped by a homicidal maniac.
Oh,
Meanwhile,
get out
Doc
of here.
Hayward. Let's groove, baby.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Doc Hayward finishes up his exams of Nadine and Mike. Boy, he has a busy night tonight, doesn't he? Doc Hayward, that is, who are sporting identically bloodied and bandaged heads.
Yeah.
This I didn't remember.
Oh, really?
Like I did, yeah, I remember like Mike's big speech and everything, but I didn't remember that he had like the exact same or like this little one-off line that he has here where he's like, God, I was so worried about you. And then that tree fell on my head. Like I actually laughed out loud at that watching it through this time. It was something I did not remember at all. And it was so goofy and it was just so out of place that a little moment of levity in an otherwise pretty grim episode. Yeah, Mike gives an impassioned speech to his new love about how frightened he was when he saw her get hurt by the falling sandbag, but apparently a tree landed on his head before he could help her. As he declares his love for her and leans in for a kiss, a confused Nadine pushes him away and asks, "Who are you?" Ruh-roh.
Uh-oh, what's happening?
That's right, folks. As we all know, back in the 90s, the cure for amnesia is blunt force trauma to the skull. Just like that was what usually caused amnesia. You know, you just had to reset the old hard drive with a kick.
Yep.
The Doc and Ed exchange looks of worried realization as Nadine's agitation grows, crescendoing when she sees Norma in her living room and ultimately peaking in a full-on tantrum when she realizes that her prized drape runners are gone. Oh, however, this is capped by one of the most quietly mature moments of the series, where Mike offers Ed a really sincere apology for letting the whole situation get out of hand.
Oof.
That was like a one, like 30 seconds of very realistic acting in an otherwise highly melodramatic theme.
I mean, a lot of this is melodramatic. I mean,
Yeah,
this episode is wild that way.
I don't know. I think that was probably Mike's best scene in the series, to be
He did get
perfectly
a lot.
honest with you.
He did start to get a lot more screen time towards the
Mhm.
end there. I just like, oh, instant reset, I guess, and that's how these characters end. I don't know. Who knows? I guess we'll find out. Maybe we
For
won't find
now,
out. I don't know.
well, I'm not going to spoil anything for you that I haven't already spoiled.
I like how Ed was like
Uh,
dancing though, kind of grooving
yeah,
in the beginning. Just like he was like feeling
him and
it.
his bolo tie. Yeah, he was ready. He was ready. I mean, Norma was looking good. But yeah, as I was saying, no more spoilers from here on out. You're gonna suffer the same cliffhanger I did, but you won't have to wait decades for your answers.
Oh, to see how it plays out. Mm.
Yeah, you'll just have to wait a couple months. Speaking of situations getting out of hand, let's check in at the Hayward home. Eileen and Ben Horn are staring glumly at each other in the living room when Donna makes her way downstairs with a packed suitcase. Eileen tries to stop her daughter, begging her to let her explain. A little late for that, ain't it, Ma? But Donna is having none of it. Ben tries to take the blame for the whole situation. It's because of him that this is all coming to light, but he was really only trying to do good, by telling the hardest truth first. This is all Billy Zane's fault. So the good doctor arrives home after a long night, and he is not happy to see Ben there. We haven't seen him this pissed since he chewed out Andy and Dick for assuming that an 8-year-old was a serial killer.
Mm.
Sylvia, that's Ben's wife, for those of you who haven't checked in 26 or so odd episodes.
I was like, oh, I assumed that's who that was, but it's like,
Yeah. No, she's the housekeeper, She butts in to escalate the situation. Donna breaks down sobbing in Will's arms, proclaiming, "You're my daddy," repeatedly. This gets the doc. Oh, God. Yeah, it was unfortunate how this panned out for Donna, because she did a good job leading up to it. But yeah, I mean, everybody, like all the women in this scene, are just there to cry.
Well, even Doc does at the end, kind of.
Yeah. This gets the Doc riled up enough to actually throw a punch at Ben, who stumbles over and smashes headfirst into the side of the fireplace. Will lets out a wail of anguish/rage, and everybody starts crying except for Ben, who just lays twitching and bleeding on the floor.
Now he's got amnesia, and he's going to go back to high school.
He already had amnesia.
He's got it again. He's got super amnesia.
Or generally.
I don't know.
He's super amnesia. He's a caveman now. He'll be carrying around a club and wearing a loincloth going unga bunga.
It's just like, is that where we're leaving this? Okay.
Yup. That's where we're leaving this. Imagine how 13-year-old Gabe felt in 1991. Oh,
it must be
we're not
back.
even close to done yet, folks.
Oh, I know.
At the Blue Pine Lodge, sneaky old Andrew was swapping out the safety deposit box key in the cake saver for one of his own. Unfortunately for him, Pete also just had a really long night and is just now arriving home from it to catch Andrew red-handed in his little act of subterfuge.
Hmm.
Oh, Andrew.
Didn't see that coming.
Mm. Now they're in it together.
In it
Let's
to
see
win
how
it.
that works out for them. Meanwhile, Cooper and Harry have found Pete's truck in the forest and are following Earl's trail to Glastonbury Grove. About halfway through, Cooper stops and suddenly stands very still for a moment, eventually snapping out of his little trance to let Harry know that he has to continue on his own. Harry allows Cooper to take the flashlight with him and proceed forward alone, hanging back a little bit before following him at a safe distance. Cooper hears the hooting of an owl, of course, as he approaches the sycamore trees. He examines the pond to find it full of the same oil that the log lady had a jar of, an opening to a gateway. As Harry watches from afar in astonishment, Cooper makes the same pass around the pond, finding the drapes and passing through them and out of our reality. Cooper enters a long hallway. Actually, before that, I want to stop and say that when I was a kid, I was not impressed with Harry's acting or Michael Onkian's acting here as Harry.
Right.
I was much more impressed this time around. It was subtle, but it was like on a closer, more high def look, you can see like how big his eyes are. You can see his throat tightening.
I mean, he's
Like
not
he
given a lot to
looks,
do in this episode.
he's
So,
not, but what he is given, he makes the most of.
right.
Like he's, yeah, in this episode, all he is a man who has seen something that he can't explain and doesn't understand. And he's just wrestling with that as best he can. Oh, I can relate to that. But anyway, yeah, I just revisiting this, I was way too harsh on his acting in the past. This was better in the
Well,
end than I gave him credit for.
when was the last time you watched this prior to this?
Oh, 12,
Oh,
14 years, give or take.
okay.
I don't remember making much note of it one way or the other at that point.
In those,
Um,
so that if like 12, 14 years ago is when you watched all of it.
it might have
Did you
been.
ever go back and like watch just a random episode randomly more recently?
No,
No.
no, no. I don't take them out of context because you kind of. I feel like for these characters, you need that build in order to care about them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's hard for me to like just tune in on an episode and be like, "Oh, fucking Lucy's on her bullshit again," you know? Instead of adding some context to that might have come along in previous episodes. I mean, I know it all by heart for by and large, and it's going to be a long time before I watch any episode besides maybe this last one again. Um, but yeah, I mean, there were definitely some takeaways I had from this watch through
Right.
that I didn't have before. And I don't know if that's just age and maturity or if that's because I went at them with a far more analytical eye this time through. And I think maybe it's a combination of both of those factors. Um, but yeah, for me, it's always been a binge watch. And, it's only 30 episodes, so it's not exactly like it takes long if you're doing it more than once a week. Um, but yeah, for me, it's a lot more about the journey than the destination, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Although the destination for me was always, beyond comprehension and just spent a long time trying to comprehend it.
Right.
Cooper enters a long hallway lined with the same red drapes, at the end of which stands the Venus de Milo. Also, at that other end of the hallway, he finds another opening leading to the room from his dream, where Laura Palmer told him the name of her killer. The lights fade in and out, and a strobe flickers while a haunting jazz ballad swells in the background. Behind yet another set of drapes, the man from another place emerges into a spotlight, performing a dance across the room and settling into a green chair. As Cooper and the small man look on, the singer, the legendary Jimmy Scott, finishes his powerful rendition of the song Sycamore Trees and fades away into nothingness. So, yeah, like not just the backwards talking, but the backwards moving.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like all very unsettling. And the more of it we see, the more unsettling it gets. Particularly the laughter. The laughter really gets to me.
It's weird. I mean, yes. It doesn't, none of it got to me. The screaming got to me. Eventually we'll get to that, but
Yeah. Not in like not in the emotional way, just in the brain bleed way.
uh, yeah,
He looks pretty terrifying in those scenes,
yeah,
to
I
be
don't know.
honest.
There's just it's funny now. Like those are things I would do. These are the type of things I would do if I was like a first year video film person or something, you know? So it's weird to like
Yeah, but
now
this would
watch
be
it.
like you would have studied this in the class that you took.
Never did
Is
we
what I'm saying.
ever.
No Lynch at all?
No, I didn't.
Hmm.
No, we didn't really discuss any Lynch.
Interesting.
Mm. Um,
It's
but
subjective, you know?
yeah. I just it's like I don't really know what to say about any of this. It just it goes off in this direction, and I kind of get it
I think a
because it's
lot of it is just like it's not really designed to explain anything. It's designed to get you to ask more questions and designed to get people to discuss it.
yeah, but there's nothing to discuss. I
There's
feel
plenty to
like I don't feel
discuss.
like I just like what's the point of
Like,
it?
what the hell does all this? Well,
Like because it
we
doesn't
haven't gotten
really
to the real weird stuff
because
yet.
it doesn't really ever it doesn't actually ever really give you anything until the very end. So then you can ask like, so it takes so long to do all this stuff in that it's like okay, and then you find out what actually happens, and so it's like, well, what was the point of all that? Like it doesn't none of it, not a lot of that was necessary in my opinion. So it's just like I don't know. That's kind of my synopsis of like that. It's like you could have probably done some of
Well,
this without a lot
yeah,
of this.
you might like the return a lot less than I thought
Oh,
you
well,
would.
great. Yeah.
If you're not a fan of like the slow, languid pacing and the why are we looking at these people right now approach,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I
might
think
not take away much from the return.
but this is what's going to be interesting because like when we watch The Lost Highway, I feel like that's just this is it's Twin Peaks distilled into a movie. And there's definitely the language stuff in that,
Hmm.
but the way it's handled is so much different. I don't know. And I was a young kind of like not I was pubescent teenage boy, and so it was like had a lot of the sexual
Oh,
aspect of the show was of the film was way
oh,
higher than this show's kind of not that sexy.
yeah, but it has ties to some of your formative years.
Right. Exactly.
So you
So
might view it
that's
through a different lens than I do, having
100%.
never
Yeah,
seen it.
exactly. No, 100%. A lot of people don't like Lost Highway. You know, it's like kind of minor Lynch. Uh, whereas Twin Peaks seems to have like this high because so many people saw it. Like Lynch films, I think, were more difficult to watch than Twin Peaks was for a lot of people. I think
Because he had a
ultimately,
lot of control.
well, just that it was
He
on
was allowed to.
broadcast
It was
television
all.
and it was,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, it's like most of his movies are generally probably in the rated R realm.
Oh, for sure.
This is,
He's all about exploring the dark side of what's going on in the idyllic little town.
right. So anyway, it's interesting. So then the weird stuff in that I definitely see that in this, but it's just done way cooler and more cinematically than through television, because the television lens of back then is so gimmicky and goofy looking that I don't buy into it. I think that's also a part of it.
It's fair.
Uh,
Well, I mean, and then in that respect, the return gets to go full cinematic,
right? No,
I mean, it'll be prestige,
right,
so.
right. So I hold out hope for the return, and I don't dislike that this kind, like what's happening in the Black Lodge. It's not like I dislike that. I just think they're trying to push it as far as they can within the television confines, and it's just not working for me. I think, and I think obviously the return is going to be allowed to do a lot more, because that's television has changed, and plus it's on like a Showtime thing, and it's just he can push
more money to work
more
with.
money, and he can push the R. He can go there if he wanted to. Whereas network television, you can't really do that. So anyway, so it's just there's just this internal kind of like that's where I'm at.
Yeah,
kind of through all of these Black Lodge scenes, really.
Yeah, I mean, you do wonder about limitations, because I mean, this is obviously all shot on one little set, made to look like an infinite maze of rooms.
I mean, they're just looping the same hallway and room over and over again. Yeah, I get that. That's smart. That's a really cool thing to do, and that's what you would do on a low budget, or like,
Yeah.
That I don't have an issue with. The curtains are fine, and the set decoration is fine. It's just kind of, the backward voicing and the backward. It needed more work on it, I think, to make it creepy for me. It's just, obviously they were like trying to produce episodes, got to get them out for their season.
Right. Yeah.
Limitation.
Yeah.
Limitation.
So yeah, like you said, they don't get to go exactly where they want to go with this. But for what it was in that time, pretty fucking cool to a 13-year-old kid.
Right. No, I get that.
Back out in the real world, Andy has found his way into the forest, seeking the sheriff in hushed whispers. The sheriff loudly hollers back his location, letting Andy know there's no need for stealth. Fade out for a commercial and fade back into daytime. A few establishing shots before we return to the grove, where Harry and Andy are staking out the pond from their seats on a fallen log. It appears to be about midday, given Harry's comment that Cooper went into the lodge about 10 hours ago. Harry is virtually motionless, his gaze fixed on the pond as Andy plies him with questions about coffee and food, to which Harry can only barely respond. This is another scene that I didn't remember at all.
Oh, okay.
And that I enjoyed a lot watching it this time through. This was very Lynch.
Very Lynch. Yeah, very kind of comical and prolonged. Kind of like...
But it's so true to Andy's character. Like, he knows something heavy is going on, so he's respectful and he's quiet. But he's still Andy, he's still like, and also he's thoughtful, he's like, hey, I mean, I can't help Harry find Cooper, but I can get him some coffee. I can keep him fed, he's doing what he can to be the good person. And
it actually reminded
he's going
me
about it in his own little way, but
it actually reminded me of a scene in Lost Highway where they have a similar, this couple has a similar conversation. And it's just kind of weird dialogue that's kind of prolonged and elongated in this very kind of...
And I have to assume that this is something that David Lynch had actually seen in real life. Like, he was just in some public place and saw a husband and a wife have a conversation like this, where the husband's only responses are like, yeah, 30 seconds later.
And it's just,
something...
and it just
keeps
he
happening.
Actually
saw that.
It's not like it's one time.
And he's like, this is something that really goes on.
Outstays its welcome.
He wants to show that. Yeah.
To give you the sense that,
something that uncomfortable could only happen in real life.
Right.
Because nobody would intentionally write a scene that uncomfortable for fiction. So that's Lynch
Oh,
taking it
100%.
that far to make it to take you out of, hey, this is just play acting. There's something more to it.
Oh, we're gonna get. I mean,
Well,
we're gonna get a massive scene of that coming up. Oh my god.
mm, indeed. I'm gonna need some water before we hit that one.
Speaking of,
Mm-hmm. Because we're about to hit it right now.
Jesus Christ,
Hey, since it's the last episode, let's visit a whole new location for the first time. How about that?
and some new character is kind of.
Yeah, three of them, only one of whom gets lines. I forgot to look this actor up. We'll have to do it at the end of the show. It's the twin,
Talk about throwing pace out the window. Goodbye.
right? Yeah, David Lynch known to let the beat drop. This is the Twin Peaks Savings and Loan. The old woman at the new accounts desk is either deeply asleep or freshly dead, and the elderly bank president, by the name of Del Mibler, does not appear to be too far behind her in either respect. He does perk up at the arrival of Audrey Horne. Hey, who wouldn't? But he's quickly confused as she immediately walks over and chains herself to the door of the vault,
Sexy time.
declaring an act of civil disobedience in protest of Twin Peaks S&L's participation in the Ghostwood Development Project.
Mm-hmm.
She asks Mr. Mibler to contact the editor of the local paper, that's Milford Jr., and to also please bring her a glass of water. Dell awkwardly complies with her second request, walking quite a distance to fetch the water, bring it back to her so she can take one sip, and then walk the same distance back to the table where he picked up the glass in the first place.
Right.
Boy, yeah, I think they might have forced him to make those cuts on Audrey. Like, I think he probably would have just done the whole thing
right.
in
I think
one long take if he could have.
I think he loved this old man, and if you know Lynch, he likes people. He loves. He's got a new thing about interviewing people right now. I don't know what that's about.
Oh yeah,
But anyway, he loves people and kind of the way they are, and he will just fixate on something, and you could tell that he just loved this old man and just loved the way he walked and his like it almost seemed like he was forgetting a lot of the time. He kind of stop and forget what the fuck he was doing. Anyway, yeah. There was even times
he
I
was
thought he was
a
gonna,
wild character, but like the actor disappeared into it and made it. He could buy into it, particularly in this town. Completing the process, Dell is distracted by the arrival of Andrew Packard, whom, let's not forget, most of the town still believes to be dead. Pete is along to helpfully point out to Dell, he's not, still alive. The two are there to find out exactly what is in the safety deposit box that Thomas Eckhart left behind. Mibler states that there may be a bit of a problem accessing the box as he walks them toward the door and gestures where Audrey awaits. Audrey cheerfully greets Pete. They just saw each other the night before explaining to Andrew the purpose of her actions. Andrew, impressed by Audrey's moxie, tells Mibler that he sees no actual problem and simply asks Audrey politely to open the door for them, to which she respectfully complies. This is another scene I liked very much on this particular watch through. I didn't necessarily remember the interaction between Andrew and Audrey being like quite that respectful and being just like, oh, yeah, that's cool. Can you just, let us through?
I think it's funny though. I mean, I thought she's supposed to keep the bank from working.
Right.
And yet she's like, nah, you can just come right through.
Well, and you can even tell that her heart is not totally into it, because the first thing she's doing is like, call the paper, call Agent Cooper. She's just trying to draw attention to herself. This is Laura Loomer chaining herself to the doors of Twitter headquarters or whatever.
It's also funny that the old
Not, it's
man
not quite that bad, but
didn't need a key to open that door. She just opened it anyway.
yeah.
I thought that was
Funny how
bizarre.
worked out. Yeah.
Let's not worry about that.
We'll chalk that one up to a wizard or, Black Lodge interference or what have you. Where did I leave off? A decrepit Mibbler leads Andrew and Pete to their box while Audrey continues in vain to try and get his attention to summon the press and hopefully Agent Cooper. Sorry, Audrey. He's kind of busy right now. Out in the office, the security guard answers a ringing phone and happily declares, "It's a boy." Andrew and Pete, giddy with anticipation, turn the key in the lockbox to find a note reading, "Got you, Andrew. Love, Thomas," and a bomb, which detonates within mere seconds. The windows and the doors of the building explode outward in the aftermath, and we see Mibbler's thick glasses flying through the air and landing in a tree, while a handful of dollar bills rain from the sky.
Now, I don't understand exactly how that's possible, but I appreciate the visual. Like, it seems like they were down a stairs in like a basement area. Like how the glasses could blow up stairs and out into the lobby and out the window. Incredible.
Big bomb, huh?
Didn't seem like it, but
No, yeah, you didn't even see any flame in that explosion. Again, budget cuts, but
what a weird,
maybe that'll give you some hope.
What a weird fucking.
Dude, I was crushed seeing that the first time.
I was just like
what?
I was just like, really? This is what? This is what they did? Is what I was like. I was like, okay, okay, write them off. Goodbye. Interesting.
Where's John Justice Wheeler when you need him, huh?
No.
Should have stayed on the plane, Audrey.
Shoulda.
Quick cut to the Double R and some somewhat lighter fare. Okay, I lied.
That almost doesn't make any
Andy
sense, though. Like, if they wanted to write her off, they could have just wrote her off that way. Like, why didn't they? Like, that seems so bizarre to me.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry, I was mistaken earlier. We do not only get just one happy ending. We do get a little bit of a happy ending here with Bobby and Shelley. First, though, we see the Major and his wife cuddling happily in a booth. Bobby is at the counter with Shelley, and they're both looking on at his parents in admiration. He slaps the counter and tells Shelley they should get married, and Shelley rightfully points out that she's still technically married. So we get subsequently a quick shot of Leo's current situation to remind us why she may not be technically married for much longer. The two continue to act lovey-dovey, mutually teasing the late arrival of Shelley's coworker Heidi, who is apparently famous for going a little extra long with her morning sex with her husband. Remember this callback?
I do not remember this character.
Yeah. This is all the way back to the pilot.
Oh, is it that far? Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yep. A lot of that going on. It's Lynch. Giggly Heidi and her sex games. That's all from the beginning. But at the end of this giggling session, Sarah Palmer makes an entrance into the diner with Dr. Jacoby guiding her, seeking out the Major. Jacoby tells the Major that an obviously distressed Sarah has a message for him. But the message, though it comes from Sarah's mouth, appears to be in someone else's voice, as it says, "I'm in the Black Lodge with Dale Cooper. I'm waiting for you." The last part in the famous backwards speak.
Okay, this is great, but then what's the fucking point of this? Because like the Major never does anything, so it's like why even let him know, Lynch?
From what I understood, the notion was that the Major would go to Cooper's rescue in season 3.
Oh, is that? So they were still thinking that, or they just left it in knowing they didn't have that?
Remember, they filmed all of this finale without knowing that the series had been canceled.
Okay.
So everything you see here was in anticipation
So
of
they
another
killed off a
series
bunch of
coming up.
people knowing that maybe they just needed to get rid of Audrey and Pete. Just kill them all. I mean,
Um,
Pete took that bomb to the face. I
yeah,
mean,
we'll
maybe
touch
Audrey. You could come up with some weird reason that Audrey could survive, but like Pete took that fucker to the
this.
face.
This was another scene that was rewritten by Lynch.
Oh.
So
Also,
not part of the original.
how come we don't find out what happened to fucking uh, Shelly's boyfriend? What, Leo?
Leo.
I mean, we know he's like he's still in peril with the spiders, but like, what happens? Nothing happened. Did the spiders get him? He's just still there staring at the spiders. Like, what's going on? In like the return, is it like 25 years later and he's still staring at the spiders and there's more of them? Like, what the fuck? Is he
A
Spider
lot of
Man
questions
now?
that I asked. Yeah. Does he gain powers? Did Wyndham Earl irradiate the spiders before they bit him?
Oh. Anyway, sorry, Gabe. Anyway, this is why this episode,
No,
yeah, it's a difficult episode for me.
it is. It leaves a lot of questions. And again, you're going to get the answers to not all of them, but some of
I
them
hope I
a
never get the
lot
answer to
sooner
Leo.
than I
I hope
did.
I never get the answer to Leo. I hope they just like never, like at the end of the return, just at the very end, it's just like this old guy still staring at a spider cage, and then just rolls credits, and you never.
Skeleton, you
No, not
mean?
a skeleton. He could still be alive.
How? Who would have been feeding
I
him?
don't know. I don't know. Maybe he's eating rats. He's found an elaborate way to kill them with his feet, and then he eats them raw. I don't know, Gabe.
Pickle Rick! Pickle Leo!
Anyway,
He transfers his consciousness into one of the
do we
tarantulas
really need to
with
explain
help
it? They
from an
don't. They don't
evil
feel the
owl.
need to explain anything. So
They don't. They really don't. To some people, that's part of the charm. Uh, and from here on out, we return to Cooper in the lodge, where he and the small man are both seated, staring intently at each other. Eventually, the small man speaks and tells him, "When you see me again, it won't be me." He also tells Cooper that he is in the waiting room. He offers him coffee and tells him that some of his friends are here. The first of these friends is Laura Palmer, who approaches and takes the empty seat next to the small man. She greets Cooper and tells him she'll see him again in 25 years, then says, "Meanwhile," and strikes a pose. Or is it this? I think it's this.
yeah, something like this.
Hand in front.
Something Vogue.
Brief medium close up on Cooper, but when we return to a wide shot, Laura is no longer there. A lot of people ducking in and out through those sorts of cuts in this, which I think adds to the surrealist approach and liked that stream of consciousness. Because that's something that happens in dreams. You kind of look and they're just not there anymore. He looks toward the small man and the empty seat next to him in confusion. The camera again cuts away from the empty seat, and when it cuts back, the elderly bellhop is there with a cup of coffee in hand. He and the small man exchange hallelujahs before he offers the coffee to Cooper, setting it on the end table next to Cooper's chair. When Cooper looks up from the mug, the giant is standing in place of the elderly bellhop. He returns to the empty seat and says, "One and the same." The giant vanishes as well via cutaway, and the small man begins rubbing his hands as if in anticipation.
But in reverse.
Oh, yes. So he already knows what's happened, or what will happen, or what has always been happening. Cooper picks up the coffee to find that it has solidified in the mug. He tips it again, and it is returned to normal, spilling out of the cup. After a third tip, the liquid takes on the consistency of the black oil in the pond. The small man looks off to his side and says, "Wow, Bob, wow." That's an easy one to say backwards.
Mm.
then turns to look at Cooper again and says, "Fire, walk with me," as the screen explodes into flames. A brief scream pierces the air, and the strobe light starts up again as Cooper suddenly finds himself alone in the room. He moves on to the next hallway, which looks an awful lot like the first hallway. He enters another room identical to the first, also empty of any other people. So he turns and goes back the way he came. In the first room, he again finds the small man who points directly at him and says, "Wrong way." Cooper returns again to the empty second room when suddenly the small man appears, looking slightly more sinister and twitching uncontrollably. "Another friend," he announces between bursts of eerie reverse laughter. This one really fucked with me right here. This creeped me the fuck out. Today, back then, every day.
Fun.
Unsettling, nightmare fuel. Because I think I mean, it's hard to tell because of the long shot, but I think he's got the pale eyes in this scene. And I think Maddie does too. Jumping ahead a little bit, Maddie enters the room, warning Cooper to, quote, "watch out for her cousin," quote. The camera actually staying on her as she fades out of view as Cooper turns away from her. Cooper again returns down the hallway back the way he came, re-entering the first room to find it completely empty, even bare of furniture this time. So is it really the first room? It's hard to tell anymore, isn't it? He walks further into this room and then looks down to his left where he again sees the small man, or is it the same small man? As this one has pale blue eyes and utters the word doppelganger at him. Interesting stuff. Cooper looks up to see a similarly pale-eyed Laura Palmer, holding the same pose as before, but with a decidedly unpleasant look on her face. She again says "meanwhile," but in a much harsher tone, and then begins screaming and lunges after Cooper as the strobe lights flash on once again. We do see a brief flash of Wyndham Earle's face here before Cooper runs from the first room back down the hallway.
So this is her movement is cool in the strobe light. Her reverse movement over it, that's cool. I think they did a good job with that. I think that was the attention to the reverse, like the more exaggerated wild movements would have helped with this.
Kind of, yeah, like that second set with the small man.
I don't know if you ever saw that Another Friend Scorsese movie with Nicolas Cage, Bringing Out the Dead. Okay, so they shot long sequences in reverse and then played them forward. And it's really unsettling. And I think, but they're not little simple. They're not little simple movements. They're more like big, long movements that then look really bizarre. Really, like it's more accentuated. I feel like.
Did you see Tenet?
Yes, I saw Tenet. Yeah, that does it too, but in a different way.
So
it's a similar thing, but you kind of what's going on, kind of. So it's a little different. It's not exactly.
Well, sometimes.
Well, yeah, but I think
eventually you get it explained to you. Better than Memento, anyway.
I guess going into that movie, I knew what it was about, so I didn't really question it so much. But anyway,
But yeah, it does a good job of.
There's certain ones that work, and then there's certain ones that just look goofy, and it doesn't work so much, or it's just not enough. But I think that one where she's kind of railing and screaming over the chairs and just looks
climbing over,
and with the strobe lights, it just looks more aggressive. And anyway, that one works.
Yeah, for me. The other ones are far more like subtle. They just kind of like get into your psyche. This one clubs you over.
Right, and I think that's good in the beginning because you're like something's off. But I think then they need to get more and more aggressive, and some of them do, and some of them don't quite work. But anyway,
yeah. Anyway, yeah. Entering the second room again, or whatever room we're on, whatever room he happens to be in, because we've seen the statue disappear from the hall now. So
actually, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you were watching this back then, or whatever, what was your take on what this was? What was going on? or what you thought. I mean, with little knowledge of the show and no
I mean, I
internet.
thought he was in the Black Lodge with the spirits,
That's it.
which wasn't, I mean, it wasn't any different than like, I mean, that's the place, the same place he was in his dream, but this time because he was physically there. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any more explanation to it than that.
And the spirits
Like I
just
didn't understand how the rules of the Black Lodge were different than
you didn't come up with any
the
ideas
rules.
for yourself or what you thought what was happening or why they talked backwards, forwards, or
Nothing quite like that.
you
Or
never
why there was constant jazz playing in the background,
or
or
why the thing always just seemed like a constant, like a maze of a circle. Like you just kept going down the same route over and over again. That's just how the lodge was, or
yeah, I mean, I guess I figured I've watched enough like sci-fi and supernatural stuff at that point already to kind of get like that impression of stuff that doesn't follow the proper rules of time and space. Um, so I was kind of comfortable with already with like pushing those sort of boundaries. Like again, Harry's saying that he's been in there 10 hours, but like we see 20 minutes of what he does there. Like, so there's relativity involved and there's things we already can't explain and can't understand. So yeah, it's just the way I see it is that's just the best way our brains can process the information they're receiving while they're in some place that a human isn't meant to be in.
right. I guess I was hoping that the spirits all talked backwards, but the ones that were still alive would talk normal. So then he talks
Oh, so like
when Annie
not,
talks, Annie still talks backwards, and when
well, that's
Earl
not
talks,
actually Annie though.
well, we don't
Let's
know that,
remember.
right? Is that really
Well,
Earl? Does he really kill
that's
Earl?
kind of the impression I get is that it's just Earl fucking with him at first, like using what limited power he's been able to grasp in the Black Lodge to fuck with
But then
Cooper's
Earl is still
perception.
talking backwards, though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. See, that's what
because he's
I
kind
guess.
of like absorbed part of
Hmm.
this spirit element into himself at this point.
So you don't think he ever we don't ever talk to Annie really?
No, I think the real Annie we just see in that brief fade in and out. That's all we ever have of the real Annie. Everything else is just crap that Earl is feeding into Cooper's brain to try and scare him, to try and ruin his courage in the face of the Dweller in the Threshold.
Okay, but I thought he couldn't get the power until he killed her.
Well, I think he assumes that bringing her into the lodge is all he needs to do to, like, quote, sacrifice her.
Oh, okay.
And then Bob quickly proves him wrong.
All
So
right. I'm
actually,
sorry. We should
well,
probably
here's
we should
yeah,
probably
we're jumping ahead
ahead.
here. Um, so yeah, here's the scene where we think my theory is that this is just Earl feeding Cooper visions with the power of the Black Lodge.
Okay.
This is where Cooper suddenly finds himself bleeding from the stomach, leaving a trail back toward the way he came, which he turns and follows back down the hallway, seemingly starting to feel the effects of the wound. Reaching the next room, he sees his beloved Caroline along with himself laying on the floor with matching stab wounds in their abdomens. This is presumably from the night that Caroline died when Earl attacked both of them. Carolyn's body starts to rise from the floor, and now we see it's actually Annie in the same outfit. This is another kind of like backwards motion scene that is sufficiently creepy, I would think. Cooper calls out Annie's name repeatedly as the strobe lights flash on again, and we get a lot of perspective shots to segue to the next room, where we see Annie standing in a black dress. She calls out his name and tells him what appears to be Caroline's story, that she saw the face of the man who killed her, and it was her husband. A confused Cooper calls Annie by her name again, and she asks, "Who's Annie?" And we do more cuts back and forth from Cooper's close-up to see a pale-eyed Caroline, who repeats over and over again, "It's me." Cooper takes her by the shoulders and calls her Caroline. She again transforms back into Annie, but this time in the flowered dress. Two quick cuts to Cooper back and forth have Annie transform into screaming Laura, who, remember, we saw briefly flash Earl's face, and then abruptly into Wyndham Earl himself. The two turn and look as Annie briefly fades in and out of view from her presumed captivity, and Earl offers to let her live in exchange for Cooper's soul, a bargain to which Cooper readily agrees. So here's what I'm thinking. If he brought Annie in as bait, Cooper's going to be his sacrifice. But like, he's not sacrificing Cooper to the lodge, he's claiming Cooper's soul for himself as revenge. So he's violating this order of things, and this is where he gets tripped up. So Earl immediately plunges a knife into Cooper's abdomen, and he falls to the ground as the scream once again bursts into flames. Suddenly, these scenes reverse, and we hear Earl screaming. After a close-up of Cooper's strobed face, we cut back to see Earl in Bob's clutches, clearly cross-eyed in pain. With his ever-present evil grin, Bob bids Cooper to leave, telling him that Earl is wrong and he cannot ask for Cooper's soul. Instead, Bob will take his. Earl screams crescendo as a column of fire leaps from the top of his head, which Bob appears to suck into his palm through the back of Earl's neck. Earl's head and hands drop motionless, but he remains upright. Cooper backs slowly away and heads out the way he came as Bob chuckles evilly. Behind Bob in the drapes, we see the silhouette of a prancing figure who makes his way in, twirling through the back entrance. It's a pale-eyed Cooper doppelganger who runs right up to Bob's side and exchanges maniacal laughter with him. As Cooper again makes his way through the hall, a pale-eyed Leland suddenly steps into view, protesting, quote, "I did not kill anybody." Cooper looks back and sees his doppelganger following. He quickens his pace as his double stops to share a laugh with Leland and a menacing smile directly into the camera, breaking the fourth wall, before following Cooper through the drapes. Cooper runs through hall after hall and room after room, seeking an escape as the doppelganger continues to gain on him, pausing briefly to leer into the camera and breaking the fourth wall again. Cooper finally reaches the first room, and as he heads toward the exit, the doppelganger catches up with him and grabs him by the shoulder. The light goes out, and yet another strobe hides the two of them from view. Then Bob's horrible grinning face fills the screen. Yeah, I'm going to give all my reactions after we finish here. Back in the forest, the drapes appear with a bright spotlight on them, waking Harry from his doze perched on the same log as he's been on for presumably about 24 hours now. Excuse me. Gonna need
a little sippy
moisture. Sippy sip. He comes to and sees Cooper and Annie laying in front of the pond. He rushes over to them, calling out their names. Cooper is blinking, but unresponsive. Annie's face is bloodied, and she appears to be unconscious. After one last extended close-up on the Snoqualmie Falls, we cut to Cooper slowly awakening in his bed at the Great Northern, Harry and Doc Hayward hovering intently over him. Cooper bizarrely claims he wasn't sleeping, then immediately asks about Annie. Harry tells him that she's fine and she's at the hospital. Cooper's response to this is, quote, "I need to brush my teeth." The Doc and Harry allow Cooper to rise on his own. As he reaches the door to the bathroom, he turns back and repeats his mission of oral hygiene to the other men, who exchange worried glances after Cooper closes the door behind him.
I instantly, I, anyway, whatever
You
happens,
knew it was coming.
it's just like, oh man.
Uh, he opens the toothpaste and places Cooper opens the toothpaste and places a small amount on his brush before squeezing the entire contents of the tube into the sink. He looks up toward the mirror and suddenly smashes his face
Mm-hmm.
into it,
Mm-hmm.
drawing the attention of Harry and the doc outside. As they try to enter the bathroom, Cooper stares at his bloodied reflection and sees Bob's face staring back. An evil smile creeps across his face as he repeats the words, "How's Annie?" in a mocking tone in between fits of hysterical laughter. Roll credits.
And we're done with this one. Let's just put this away, and this show will never see the light. They'll never the years roll, guys. leave him hanging. I gotta imagine
me.
that'd be pretty
That
fucked
is
up.
13-year-old me.
It's like,
Do you understand how badly this fucked me up?
my favorite character is a bad guy now. What happens?
No, no, it's not just that. It's my favorite bad guy lost. He did his best and he still lost. And it was just so crushing to me. Like I could tell. Like I mean, we were watching on a pretty small low def TV and like I saw the doppelganger grab his shoulder. I'm like, no, I didn't just really see that, did I? And then this isn't, this is how they're going to end it? This is all we get? And fuck, my heart was broken.
So was that the original ending, or was this Lynch's kind of like, well, maybe someday I'll revisit this, so let's do this instead?
The original ending just had Cooper seeing Bob in the reflection, and that was it. Nothing. It wasn't quite so violent
Bob
as
looking
the
at
version
Bob,
that Lynch
basically.
Well, one argument is that Cooper's doppelganger carrying Bob.
Right.
Out of the Black Lodge.
Right. I think that's what the Leland doppelganger means, right? Like that.
That is something that is open entirely to your interpretation.
So you could interpret that, like, technically Cooper could still be alive, running around endlessly in purgatory, in this Black Lodge purgatory, still alive, even though his body is this doppelganger body with Bob, who can come in and out of it whenever. But yeah, that's got to be rough. Like, yeah, no more. You're done. Sorry. That's fun. Fun show.
It was a tough way.
What a twist.
Tough way to say
what
goodbye.
A twist.
And, you know, like I said, it wasn't until my early 20s that I watched Fire Walk with Me. And I think it wasn't until after I'd done the rewatch that I did it. So the first time that I rewatched the series all the way through, like binged it, I think this would have been 2006 or 2007. I had The Miracle of TiVo. Badoop, badoop, badoop. So this was, and we had DirecTV. So they were running it on the Bravo network. They were running one episode a week. So that's what I did it like this. I did one episode a week for half a year and delved into it deeper than I had done the first time through.
Right.
And I got to the end. And knowing everything that happened in that last scene, I burst into tears and just cried like a baby.
What a baby. No,
it just, and I, you know, honestly, I was at a pretty emotionally fragile point at that point in my life.
Good guys don't win. Weren't you around last night?
For pro wrestling fans and comic book readers, they do.
Everything else,
but
reality.
Yeah, in real life, it doesn't always go down like that. No matter how hard you fight, no matter how high your expectations are, sometimes your courage isn't perfect, and sometimes it fails you, and sometimes you lose. even when the stakes are really, really high.
So I guess the whole story here is the fun that fact is that Cooper will kill Annie, right? That's what Bob gets off on, right? Isn't that's the whole setup for this? Like what that third season would ultimately be.
I don't know a lot of what they had planned for the third season. There's not a lot of that out there.
What?
And I dug in, like I
Oh,
looked,
oh, really?
and there's not a lot of talk of that other than like Frost says, yeah, we were definitely going to explain evil or explore Evil Cooper a lot and have that be the main part of season 3. He did say that season 3 would have been a lot darker and would have been more in the direction that like this back half of season 2 took.
That sounds fun, interesting, but I don't know if would you a fan would you have enjoyed that?
It depends on what the ultimate payoff would have been to me. And this is my love-hate relationship with Twin Peaks, is that, I'm a big fan of closure, or at least like a good firm ending chapter that's got, not necessarily a perfectly happy ending, but not always the Pyrrhic victory either. You know what I mean? Or not always like the absence of hope at the end of the chapter, So yeah, it was a bitter pill to swallow all around.
Well, because here goes back into my thing with Wyndham Earl, like just how much of a tool he was. Like you don't really, I get it. You get the sense that he's fucking with him in the lodge, but I think it would have been awesome if Bob wasn't a part of that. I mean, he is a part of it technically, but if Wyndham Earl had really if Wyndham Earl became like this crazy demon and was the demon inside Cooper, and then it was Cooper being Evil Cooper that killed Annie. That would have been really sadistic. And then if somehow Cooper did come back and then learned all this stuff that he technically killed Annie even though he didn't. I don't know. That would have been some really headfuckery. Like Bob as just this it's the Twin Peaks has a villain issue. I think that I don't know. Hopefully they remedy in the return.
It's just that they have levels of villains.
I guess.
And some of those villains are just forces of nature,
But now I guess I get that there's so much backstory here, whether it's good or bad. It's like having the prequel trilogy. It's not very good, but you have it. So like when you watch Star Wars, at least it kind of informs certain things for good or bad. So like at least
yes.
If the return is good, you have all this. I now have this wealth of backstory that will kind of color certain things, and it could make it very interesting.
Yeah, because a lot of the return would be completely meaningless to you. And honestly, like there's a lot of the return that is only tangentially related to the town of Twin Peaks as it is. Like a lot of the return takes place outside of Twin Peaks.
Oh, interesting.
In various locations.
It's a fucking spoiler.
Sorry. That's,
I thought he returned. I thought Twin Peaks, the return. I thought he returned to Twin Peaks.
Oh, there's plenty of that involved too. Twin Peaks is still very, very important to the whole story.
I like the idea that he just sits there on like a line. He just kind of walks. I'm in Twin Peaks again. No, I'm out.
And there's going to be more lore added with Fire Walk with Me. That expands on the Black Lodge and that informs a lot of what happens in the return as well.
Does Fire Walk with Me really kind of blow your mind in any certain way, or is it very how different is that from the show?
It's hard for me to say because I haven't ever done the rewatch.
Oh, really?
Since that one time.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So like I've read synopses and the like.
Can you remember your original take of it?
Yeah, it was fucking horrifying. In the same way, okay, you know that movie Kids?
Oh yeah, that kind of shit.
That kind of horrifying.
Like Gummo or some shit. Julian Dumb.
Just like
the horror of people.
Yes, very much so. Which is Lynch's thing. Yeah, it's really kind of like pity porn in
Just
a
like, this
way.
is some really disturbing people. Why are we with them? Oh, because they're just
Well,
gonna
and
keep.
not only that, but it's just there's he again, it's just the master of the mood he sets to not only have these people be disturbing, but have them be in these disturbing scenarios and shot with disturbing cuts and framing and with disturbing lighting to add to all this surrealism of it. So it was, yeah, it was another one of those ones where like I was probably way too high when I watched it, and it just kind of like, you know, poked at ugly places in me that I didn't know were there, which a lot of people will tell you is the point of David Lynch's art, is to point, is to poke at those, is to expose them and to dig them up from the dirt. There was that example that we talked about where we had that interview with Kimmy Robertson, where she uses the metaphor of like, yeah, he just reaches down your throat and pulls out this scene, and it's all slimy and gross, but here it is, and it's honest, and it came out of you. That's a pretty apt description, I think, for a lot of the work that he does and a lot of the scenes that he gets from his actors.
Right.
So it's yeah, it's not always pretty, but it always does feel honest in a sense. Like these sequences honestly feel like a dream. These weird people are weird, but they seem honestly weird and honestly real.
Okay. All right.
So, and I think that's the draw is people see weirdness in real life and they see that same kind of weirdness in Twin Peaks. And so they think, it kind of feeds into that notion that weirdness that we can't see or experience exists as well. But the fact that we can't see or experience it doesn't mean that it doesn't shape our lives in some way or another.
Right. So then, the return is that the final season? Then will there never be any more Twin Peaks?
It seems increasingly unlikely. There's always room to add to it, I suppose. I wouldn't say that it ends definitively
Hmm.
by any means, because Lynch doesn't do that. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say I went into the return hoping for a point of closure, and I was disappointed.
Someday, someday.
So take that for what you will.
Gotcha.
All right. How about we move on to some supplementals?
Oh, we love the supplemental.
We do. I would like to read the Log Lady introduction for
Oh,
this episode.
it's been a while.
It's a short one, and I think this one actually is meaningful. At least to me, it was. It made some sense here. Uh, and now an ending. Where there was once one, there are now two. Or were there always two? What is a reflection? A chance to see two? When there are chances for reflections, there can always be two or more. Only when we are everywhere will there be just one. It has been a pleasure speaking to you. And then they did a very weird, extreme close up on her left eye, like all the way to the iris. And she kind of like looked uncomfortable as they were doing it.
Interesting.
But yeah, I think that was, especially coming at the beginning of that episode, I think that was a little prophetic. Um, yeah, I know. That's something I'm going to bring up later. Can't bring that up now. That spoils other shit.
Okay. Okay.
Sycamore Trees. The song Sycamore Trees was written by David Lynch.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yes, it was. The lyrics are a copy of some lines in Lynch's early draft of Ronnie Rocket. Quote, I got an idea, man. You take me for a walk under the sycamore trees, the dark trees that blow, baby. In the dark trees, I'll see you and you'll see me. I'll see you in the branches that blow in the breeze. I'll see you under the trees. That song I thought was really
James
good.
should have sang that.
Yeah,
They should have brought James
that
back.
sounds like something he would say. It's more of a feeling than a place. This was the final on-screen appearance of veteran actor Hank Warden. That's the elderly bellhop. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention in those that scene with Lucy and Andy in the beginning, how the opening credits,
Oh.
how like they kind of spread across the top and bottom of the frame
Mm-hmm.
instead of covering them up during the close-up, which is something I don't think I've ever seen done. Like usually they would just like put it lower to the frame, but like he did
Right.
that sort of approach, and I thought that was interesting. There were some of the screams and the backwards talking from the scenes in the Black Lodge got sampled for a song called Wrapped in Plastic by Marilyn Manson.
Mm. Mm. Who?
You know, some problematic douchebag who we used to look up to, unfortunately. I'll touch base on this right now. Laura said, I'll see you again in 25 years. The first episode of The Return didn't quite make it there. That was the intent.
Right.
But it aired 25 years, 11 months, and 11 days after the airing of the finale. So
didn't hit
close
26. It's 25. It's close enough.
Still technically, yeah.
Wait, but
I
did
think
she see Did she see him in that first episode?
I mean, you know, that's the presumption here is that she's referring to
Right.
his dream where he was an old man.
When does it take
And
place?
that
Or could it just
The
take place
Return?
25 years later? It doesn't have to necessarily take place actually 25 years later, does it? They could just set it 25 years later.
I mean, it was filmed roughly 25 years later, so
I know, but I'm just saying, Gabe, they could technically just say 25 years
it
later.
works either way.
Right.
Yeah. If you want to say Twin Peaks was set in the 70s and The Return was set in 95, you could probably pull that off. But, you know.
Okay, then here's a fun question. So
Uh-huh.
season 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks takes place in like a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the time period of The Return? Is it like in a month? A week?
Oh, I'd say it's less than that. Yeah, probably 2
so
weeks.
it's the similar thing though.
Maybe less.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I would say it's a shorter time frame, but it's, yeah,
How many episodes?
18.
18.
And yeah, not the 42. These are full hours. Most of which have the occasional musical performance, though, to
Oh, I know. I'm aware.
kind of,
I'm aware.
yeah. Do you know yet which Nine Inch Nails song is part of it?
Currently no, but I think I've watched it.
Oh, like
On
you just watched the YouTube.
But I don't remember right now.
Um,
That was a while
I
ago.
will
When did it come
say
out? That's like a couple years.
2016
Yeah, way longer.
was when The Return aired. Yeah,
Yeah.
so a while back.
I don't remember. Shit, that's that long ago. I feel like it wasn't that long ago. Anyway,
I know, right? Coming up on 10 years for that.
Pre-COVID?
It's fucking wild.
what?
COVID robbed us of a lot of time, didn't it?
I enjoyed
there
COVID.
was
I like staying home and not work, getting paid but not working.
Yeah, I didn't have that advantage.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I did.
I just had to work with a mask on all the time.
Delivered
and pray
beer
that I
to
didn't get
my
sick.
delivered beer to my beer porch in my garage and just sat there and enjoyed the day. And I know people were dying and it's awful, but I had a good time. Played a lot of video games. Anyway.
Yeah, I did that too. There was a scene that was shot that was never scripted and also not used, which depicted Josie's body kind of trapped in the curtains. Like you couldn't see her head, but you could see the rest of her,
Hmm. Weird.
to kind of imply that she was somewhere isolated between two realms.
So how would you know it was her if you couldn't see her head?
I guess it just referred back to the clothes she was wearing.
It would have been funny if that was just a scene where
Or
like
maybe they had planned on bringing maybe part of why this was scrapped is they couldn't get Joan Chen in for a doppelganger scene.
through the night Harry would be sit there on the log and just at the night the drapes would appear and he'd just see this kind of dead Josie body dangling from the and he'd
You'd
just
see
sit
her
there he'd just sit there longingly like they would
you'd
just
see her face and the pull knob on his
they
drawer
just
in the
teased.
morning.
Oh yeah, there's that part
Yeah,
too. Like what the fuck? Anyway, just fucking with him.
right.
Anyway, that's mean. Poor. Yeah, we really didn't get any kind of closure of anything.
No, and that's
Yeah.
David Lynch.
Yeah.
I mean, but again, I would say that a lot of that is under the like they were working under the assumption that there would be another season, even though like when you ask a lot of those people, both Lynch and Frost had really lost their passion for the show at this point and probably wouldn't have put a whole lot of energy into season three.
So I do have to say that like after the finale, Amazon does push me into the return right away. Like
Hmm.
so like first episode and the episodes popped up. I did see Hawk with all white hair.
Yeah,
That was kind of cool.
there you go.
Just a
Yeah,
little
that's
thumbnail.
an easy.
No, I just thought that was kind of cool. It's like, oh, okay, Hawk's in it. That's kind of
Yeah,
sick with his fucking weird ass
Hawk.
super white hair. It's like
Yeah,
superhero hair.
I feel like Hawk is kind of similar to Andy and Lucy in that he exists in a little bit of a bubble away from everything else, but maybe that's just
He's like a
his
series
ancestors.
regular, and so he's protected.
Yeah, or his ancestors are protecting him from the evil of the lodge.
What Native American mumbo jumbo is this?
Hey, they'd been there a lot longer.
I suppose.
They, part of the secret history of Twin Peaks is them telling Lewis and Clark about it. So,
Lewis and Clark. Clark
but we can talk
and
about that some
Lewis.
other time.
And their dog Seaman.
So here's the segment that explains all of the stuff that Lynch added or
Oh,
changed from the script.
let's go.
So the early scene in the sheriff's station, he added both the log lady and Ronat Pulaski to that scene. They were originally not part of it. The confrontation between Benjamin Horne and the Haywards is generally the same, although there's more dialogue. Also, in the original script, Doc Hayward shoves Ben, does not punch him, and he strikes his head against a coffee table. Doc immediately rushes to his aid and apologizes. Not quite how it goes down in
Let's keep
this
it
one.
way more vague.
Also in the script, but never filmed, Hawk and Major Briggs find Leo in Earl's cabin. Leo instinctively begins to speak when he sees them setting off the spider trap. This entire scene was replaced with the scene in the Double R, which featured Bobby Shelley, Major Briggs, Mrs. Briggs, Dr. Jacoby, Sarah Palmer, and Heidi. With the exception of Major Briggs, none of these characters appeared in the original script for this
I am
episode.
gonna say like that's fun, that's cool, and I get Lynch has a hard on for Shelley, but I think we needed the closure with Leo here, guys. Like I didn't
I think we
really.
got enough.
I don't
I
know.
think we
I
know
don't
he's
know.
got no way out of that.
No, we don't know how he got out of it.
I said, I think we know he's got no way out
I
of
think,
it.
I think, but I would still like to know if he's alive or dead. And I think Hawk being, I like a good Hawk scene, doing Hawk things.
Yeah, you'd think that Hawk would be the one to find him, wouldn't you?
Not to mention that, like the whole major scene in that is just like, just what was? There's no point of that.
Hawk and Andy show up, and Andy starts crying. Feels bad for Leo. In the script, Pete does not accompany Packer Andrew into the bank.
Mm.
Instead, Catherine rushes into the bank just before Andrew accidentally sets off the bomb. Catherine does not appear at all in this filmed episode.
Mm-mm.
In the
But they've
original
already
script,
done
Pete,
there's also already done the part where she was in a building that burnt or blew, disintegrated. Like,
yeah,
let's
let's
not
yeah,
let's not retread that
yeah,
material.
that would be a little unbelievable.
But let's have her husband or whatever do it.
Yes, also in the original script, Pete's only appearance is in the beginning at the sheriff's station. In the script, at the lodge's entrance, Truman sees a vision of a dark woman wearing chainmail, holding a sword and shield,
Josie,
presumably the guardian of the lodge.
presumably Josie. No.
Lynch changed almost everything in the Black Lodge sequences from the original script. Wyndham Earle has much more dialogue. There is no backwards talking. Laura Palmer only appears for a moment and does not speak. Lynch added the lounge singer, the man from another place, the giant, the waiter, Maddie, and Leland. Wyndham Earle's fate is a little less abrupt. He ends up shackled to a dentist's chair with Bob as the torturer.
Interesting.
The revelation at episode's end that Cooper is now inhabited, or Cooper's doppelganger is now inhabited by Bob, is more subtle in the original script. In the bathroom scene, Cooper squeezes the toothpaste, looks to the mirror and smiles, with Bob's reflection smiling back, and that's where the credits end. Roll.
Interesting. That's almost a better.
Okay, and so what Annie recites in the forest, I'll go ahead and read this whole thing because why not? This is Psalm 141, verses 7 through 10.
God given.
They will say, as one plows and breaks up the earth, so our bones have been scattered at the mouth of the grave. But my eyes are fixed on you, sovereign Lord. In you I take refuge. Do not give me over to death. Keep me safe from the traps set by evildoers, from the snares they have laid for me. Let the wicked fall into their own nets while I pass by in safety. This psalm is attributed to David. It is a plea to God not only for protection from one's enemies, but also from temptation to sin.
Mm. Okay.
This is all stuff we know or have guessed. Okay, yeah, so here's the one of the theories about Cooper's coffee. Is it is a metaphor for his courage on the entrance into the lodge. So, the first time he tips the coffee, it's solid. His courage is intact. But the coffee becomes liquid. He's starting to become afraid. And then, yeah, it's changed again to the engine oil. And that touches on some stuff we can't discuss yet.
That's interesting.
Forgot about that.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. I was curious, like, the whole engine oil is the portal. I don't know. Like,
Or it just marks it. It doesn't seem like necessarily.
like was the pond actually a pond, or was it a pond of oil also? I don't know. Such a weird thing. I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, it's
There's just a lot of stuff that's just like, we
and
don't
that's
care.
it's those mysteries that kept me guessing. And like I said, I had a very skewed memory of how much time we spent in the Black Lodge / Red Room. in regards to the volume of the series as a whole,
Right.
because those are the parts that stuck with me the most, particularly the end here. And it was just all this stuff that never made sense to me. I wanted closure for this, and the only closure I had was the closure I could create for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I can only draw my own conclusions because nobody's going to tell me what this means. It's just here for me to experience and to interpret through my own lens as best I can.
I did make a comment that it was a missed
Which
opportunity to
touch
use.
backs on what I was saying
Oh,
earlier.
well,
Is like, all experiences are just filtered through the human lens,
for sure. And so,
whether they
like,
come on a plane of existence that we understand or a one that we don't.
so like going just like because we've been watching this so consistently, and I have it fresh in my mind and everything. We've been doing it. It's just like it was kind of a missed opportunity to not bring back the David Lynch coffee cup. Like I
Right?
was like,
Yeah. They should have had that one should have been in the lodge for sure.
that would have been weird to me. I
100%
thought
that should have
then
been
people would have been paying
updated.
attention. Anyway, I mean, I get it. That's more of a classic coffee cup thing. But I just thought it would be funny or weird, or if you were paying attention to the show, the entire thing, to have this kind of, because those mugs disappeared. I
They
don't,
did.
I don't think they ever show up in season 2. Maybe in the very
Oh, they
beginning,
did. Not in the back half.
not in the back half at all. But
Not after the solution of the murder.
but
Well, maybe a couple of times.
I
We
kind of
haven't
thought.
really been seeking them out lately.
I guess I just
Although I
wish.
get the feeling you'd notice one if you saw it.
I guess I just really wish that they had used the oily stuff, like in some scenes, like
Aside from just its scent.
it's sent or in the jar, where he kind of moves it, like it was like it covered a person, or someone slid in it in the lodge,
Or like,
or
yeah, the scene a couple episodes ago where Bob was like slowly manifesting, like having his hand kind of grow out
yeah,
of
I
the
don't know. I
oil,
just feel like that would
something
have
like
been.
that.
That's like a very practical thing, and that adds a lot of like tactility to the scene. That's just kind of creepy, and the worst thing you have to do is clean up, and it's not like it's a carpeted room. I don't know. I just feel like that would have added a lot of kind of interesting stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, no, having like the oil be like that physical material link between the realms.
But
Yeah, it just seems like something they didn't explore deeply enough, at least here.
oh, yes.
Or
That's what.
not.
Guess it's
Again, I'm not
just a
directly
fucking
spoiling
motor oil
anything for you.
commercial in the return. Just. I guess I'll find out.
I guess we'll find out. So, now that we've arrived all the way at the end of this
Wait,
original ride.
I do have another question.
Yeah, sure.
When did you first bring this idea to me? Was it before the return or after the return?
No, it wouldn't have been until after the return
Okay, okay.
because it's really the return that I want you to watch.
I got you.
But as stated many times before, you will have no context.
Right.
So this is necessary
It just would have
to
been funny if
truly
you wanted me to do
appreciate.
it before the return, and then
No, I would
that would
say
have
that I
been
probably
hilarious.
started in on you like right around
Yeah.
shortly after I finished. So like 2017,
In fact,
I would have first approached
I
you
think
about
you
it.
were probably the one. Oh, Trent's on this episode or something like that, or I'd seen it somewhere, and I remember you talking about it. So I was just like, and yeah, I think that's exactly where it started. But it just would have
Hmm.
been funny, like if we had done it prior to the return. What a wild, what a wild experience that would have been.
Oh my. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to convince you that there was something to look forward to then.
Did you ever think you'd
But
actually
yeah,
get anything?
like a sequel?
Yeah.
Jesus, no.
No.
Particularly not after Fire Walk with Me. I
When did
mean, because that was 94, I want to say. 93 or 94
and then when
is when
did
that came out.
they announce that there was Twin Peaks: The Return coming?
2015, I want to say, or maybe 2016.
Was there much about
I,
that as you as the ramp up
I'm
to it?
sure there's a Wikipedia page, but it involved somebody tweeting, and I can't remember whether it was Lynch himself or whether it was Kyle MacLachlan, but somebody tweeted that Gum You Like is going to come back in style.
Hmm.
Like somebody heavily involved with the project, and that like set off mad speculation.
So what was that ramp up to it for you like as it was about to come out? Like was there a lot of news coming out about it at the time or was it just like
Well,
it was pretty
there
vague?
was a little drama involved where like Lynch backed out
Mm.
because he told like they cut the episode order and then they cut the budget.
Of course.
And he's like, "Nope, this isn't what you promised me. Not happening." And then they balked and they he called their bluff and they gave him exactly what he wanted to make exactly what he wanted.
Mm.
So yeah, there was like a couple of months where it was kind of hinky, like whether it was going to go down or not. But when it did, yeah, I was super excited. And after a few months, he released a cast list, which I'm not going to go over it with you today. We're going to wait until after we've watched Fire Walk with Me to visit that. And I will read it to you after that point. I'm probably not going to read every name because a lot of them are names I don't recognize, but I'll read the ones that are confirmed from the original series and some of the more recognizable names that were added to the new series, some of which are really going to surprise you.
Did it release weekly or did they like just drop it?
It did release weekly. They did do a 2 episode premiere and finale.
And that counts as
Um,
the 18 or is it like just long episodes?
well, 1 and 2 aired the
Okay.
same night.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
Sorry.
it counts as 2 chapters, if you
Right.
want to call it that. Like the first one did have a credits.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, if you just think of it as a film with 18 chapters, where you're going to get 18 rolls of credits in between.
Did Nine Inch Nails have any other, or Trent have any other more involvement than just the performance, or did they do any other?
Oh no,
No, just the.
nope. There are a couple of bands I think that had 2 performances, but none of the bands that perform appear like as characters or in speaking roles or anything like that.
Does their music show up again, just randomly, or?
Not that I'm aware of. Just I think it's just them doing their performance.
Cool. Is it
And
a,
it's not always the entire song.
right? It's like a bar scene or something.
Yeah, it's always at the Roadhouse.
Doing that OC
I don't
thing,
know.
baby.
Yeah, I don't know how the Roadhouse is landing acts like Nine Inch Nails.
Or are they Nine
Fucking,
Inch Nails? Or are they a different band?
they're introduced as the Nine Inch Nails,
The Nine
but
Inch.
yeah, it's them.
Okay.
It's him and like and Mara Queen's there, and
What's the lineup?
it's Robin and Atticus, Ilan, maybe just them and Mara Queen. There might be a
I
fifth.
like how
If
Mary
there's a
Queen. She's not part of
fifth,
Nine Inch Nails. What the fuck?
she is for this song, if I remember right. But um, yeah, those are the only ones I remember for sure. Maybe Alessandro.
Should have been a How to Destroy Angels song.
It's from the same era. I can tell you that like the first song they brought to him for use, uh, he said it wasn't dark enough.
Mm.
And so they wrote this one specifically for this episode and then subsequently released it on a later release.
Okay. That's one of the EP trilogy albums, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I won't tell you which one,
I'm sure I can
but
find it.
you're probably going to figure it out. There's not a lot of those that would be on the really, really dark tip. And there's definitely one that's darker than the rest. But it's fun. And yeah, so that like I don't know if you watched Watchmen, the
Yes, I
HBO
did.
series,
Yes.
and you know how like there's the LP, the vinyl version of the soundtrack
Right.
that has the whole alternate history of quote the Nine Inch Nails,
Oh no,
TNIN.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you haven't looked that up?
No.
Okay. Yeah, there's this the LPs have like articles that go over this whole alternate history of like Nine Inch Nails of this era.
Oh, interesting.
And like, yeah, it's a different lineup entirely, and it's the Nine Inch Nails, TNIN. But where that comes from is this episode of Twin Peaks. Because the guy who's the MC at the Roadhouse announces them as the Nine Inch Nails, which was not part of the script. He kind of screwed that up.
Right.
But it cracked Lynch up so much that he left it in.
That's
And
fun.
apparently it cracked Trent up too because he used it later on for that. Yeah, you should.
No, the
Yeah,
music
there
for
those
that
vinyl.
are great. I'd never bought
Oh
it. I
yeah,
didn't. Yeah.
but yeah, there were limited edition vinyl releases for all three volumes,
Yeah.
and like they have like there was this whole story about how they recorded an album in the crater where Doctor Manhattan had removed that mansion that he sent on
Oh my god,
that other planet for yeah,
that's funny.
it was fucking wild. It was really cool. Well, and then for a while they were on the website, they were selling the dirt from that crater as an actual, like there was a listing for it. I don't think it was ever actually a real product, but there was a real listing for it on the website
Oh, that's funny.
that just like perpetually said sold out or something like that. And
That's fun.
they took it to a whole new level. Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my question for you.
Yes.
Now that you've seen the entire original series, what aspects of it do you think created this longevity that it had? What parts of it were like the Star Trek parts that created this lifelong fandom for people? What are the anchors?
I think obviously, I think a lot of it just has to do with that first season, where while it's dealing with a very dark subject, the way that uh, Cooper is very lighthearted, and I don't know. I just miss some of those kind of more fun, like the chalkboard scene outside while they're doing. I don't know. I just feel like there's some kind of it kind of loses some of that quirkiness. It tries to be quirky, but it's not quirky.
Right.
It's and I
This
think
the
that
same argument that Sherilyn Fenn had.
right. So like then, but you're because of that funness of that first season, people just stick to this, hoping that it keeps going to that or keeps trying to get back to that place. You're just hungering for that punishment, I guess. Uh, and I wish some, yeah, I wish some of that had lasted through this uh, second season because it,
They made attempts, but they a lot of them fell flat.
and
A
it's
lot
just,
of them just didn't land. Like Dick Tremaine.
well, I just feel like there's very decided characters in that first season, and then you just kind of lose all that character work in the second season, and so it's really
For
just
some of them you do,
the
yeah.
writers'
Not for all
room.
of them, but for some of them.
The writers' room just really loses it. But I think it's that first season. Um, I think that's what everyone gloms onto. Like I
Yeah,
don't.
I agree.
You could probably almost get away with. I don't know. I have to watch The Return, but how much of the second season could you like get rid of? Like, what episodes would you really have to watch? Obviously, you have to watch the finale, but
I
how
mean the
much?
finale, but aside from that, not much after they reveal the killer, right?
Right? Like, it's like,
And that's where most people would agree is like as soon as the killer was revealed, the quality of the show just kind of dropped off.
what does Billy Zane have to do with the finale or the return?
Right?
Probably nothing. or even Dick
Like
Tremaine, or how much does the Weasel have to do with? Does the Weasel come back? Like, did they save? Did the
no, there's no.
see? Like, there's a lot of shit that's just like spinning wheels and like, I don't know. But I can see why
Yeah,
Dale
and
Cooper is
on
like
that
a
back.
that kind of hero, kind of
And again, you just kind of have to wonder how
Gary
much of
Cooper.
that was thrown into disarray by, the network forcing them to reveal the killer when
Mm-hmm.
they did.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're never really going to know how much that altered the actual outline they had for season 2 or beyond for that matter.
I think
Um,
I think Lynch's name is a big part of it, but I don't think Lynch is necessarily. I mean, those characters aren't just his.
yeah,
A
that's
lot of
very
that
true.
writing is Mark Frost and those
I do,
characters.
yeah.
So
I
like,
do think Frost's contributions oftentimes go under recognized.
I don't really need the weirdness of Lynch to make I just
Well,
need those
and
characters. Not that I don't like it. It's just like I just feel like it's obviously he's a Hollywood name. It's a big deal that he's doing a TV show, and I get that that's something that makes it stick in your head. Oh, okay.
right.
But at the end of there's still this other dude trying to create characters with him and make them engaging.
Hmm.
But yeah,
In a lot of aspects, he succeeds.
it's the characters, and I think it's his name. I think that's what has made it carry. Because David Lynch is obviously a really good filmmaker. He's made a lot of great films, and I think that's what helps this show continue on. Without him, I don't think it would have gotten the same amount of eyes on it. Obviously, but did it? It didn't necessarily. I mean, that first season, he's a part of certain, but he's not a part of all of it. He's not involved. He's not constantly involved with all of it. He was shooting. What was he shooting? Wild at Heart.
Wild at Heart. Yeah.
So it's like he's not like he was always there.
No, he was there a lot, but not always. Particularly after the reveal of the murderer.
But I think yeah. It's amazing. I mean, obviously people dropped off in the second season, but it's amazing people stuck around and didn't just like write it off. I think people were willing to not write things off so fast like they are now too. There's not a lot
and
of
then
content.
the people who didn't write it off were rewarded with,
Right.
a very interesting finale that unfortunately didn't lead anywhere for another 25 years.
But like in a time where like you were very kind of content starved and its weirdness was unique, where nowadays you're not content starved and weirdness is whatever fucking platform you're on, you could come across something bizarre and weird.
Yeah.
Those are things that and like you said, it created that whole, way early on we talked about like how it's kind of that beginner of the continual storyline, not the episodic storyline. So like those are things that are new, and it's nice to see like the pioneer of that,
Yeah.
kind of where it started, and just how it informed
Even
other
if the sculpture isn't quite as refined
Right.
as like the next one you're going to see.
but other writers saw that, producers, like, oh, we can do this type of story, this long form storytelling in this kind of area. And then
Be successful with it.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we are now in today. So we owe the show a lot, but it fumbled, it made mistakes, it failed. It really ultimately failed. I mean,
in the long run, yeah,
but it succeeded. In the long run, it succeeded.
I think it got outweighed by its own hype.
Sure.
I think it could never live up to certain expectations that the audience had of it. So, he had to step away from that world for a long, long time, but then eventually he found his love for it again and found his way back in.
I don't want to say that I am, I may not be the biggest fan of this show, but I am very glad that you took me on this journey to like take part in what is a piece of television history that has
I am not going to discount your criticism at all. Your criticisms are very valid from a perspective of 2020.
it's not
You know,
something I would ever go back. I'm never going to go back and rewatch any of it, you know?
not even the last episode.
No, I don't think I'll go back and I would probably rewatch something from season 1 before I would watch that final episode again.
Maybe like the international version of the pilot or something to
I
see what
don't
that's
know.
all about.
I don't know, but do I need to? Do I feel the desire? Not really. But I'm glad I saw it. I can, when people talk about it, I can now talk about it because I've seen it, and I can talk, but I can talk about its importance to where television is now, which I think is important.
Right. It's a pretty key part of pop culture
For sure.
from the 90s, and it was deeply influential on what came after for a lot of people.
I mean, you look at Lost or any kind of stuff, shit like that.
Hmm.
Big deal.
Yeah, all of it owes a big debt to this show. Um, so is there any one moment that sticks out as your favorite? Like any one particular scene or any dialogue exchange or anything like that did strike you as a solid reason to enjoy the show?
What are my favorite scenes? Uh, I love all the obviously I love all the Audrey scenes, like up into the what is the cat house?
Oh, One-Eyed Jack.
One Eyed
Yeah.
Jack's. Like I like her.
The Nancy Drew shit.
Yeah, I like her being active.
So
I like her. I
Audrey,
like her
safe to
sparring
say
with Coop.
Audrey's
I
your
like when
favorite
she's cute
character.
with. I like when the flirtation with her and Coop.
Mhm.
It's sad that you don't really. Obviously, they had some interpersonal, but
Right? Yeah. Another
because
kind
you
of
never
what
really
could
see
have
them
been.
together ever again in this fucking.
Couple of times. Like you do see them together the one time with Denise where when she
Oh, the
comes in.
Denise stuff is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, that's there's some fun stuff in this show. I think my complaint has always been that it needed to be better constructed. But that's coming from a place of seeing where this show took us, and how good
Mhm.
the writing got. Like this writing is
Right.
just kind of lazy and like, but for the time it's not. For the time it was
No,
doing
no.
something. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
it's um I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
trying
these
to
are the steps we had to take in order to evolve to that point.
right.
These are the baby steps.
I wish Hawk got more to do. I like Hawk as a character.
Hawk's fun. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. We got to see a lot more of him in that first season, didn't we?
yeah. I don't know. There's some fun stuff. I just wish I would have focused on different things and kind of massaged things a little differently.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I enjoyed it. Oh, I loved.
Hey.
I'm forgetting his name now, but Miguel Ferreira's character,
Oh,
Albert. Albert.
Yeah.
Loved
Albert
Albert.
Rosenfeld.
Ah, man,
Yeah.
lose. Just spoil that. Do we get him in the return?
I'm not saying
Oh, Jesus.
one way or the other. You're gonna have to wait until I read you the cast list.
All right.
Which will happen. We'll
he'll
do
be-
that at
but
the
he-
end of Missing Pieces.
Okay. All right. But it was always fun when Albert was on.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite characters. Like the relationship that evolved between him and Truman was I really would have loved to have seen more scenes of him and Truman being buddy buddy. Like Albert still being his acerbic self, making cracks and everything, but Truman just kind of like being, oh, Albert, behave now. But
Donuts.
yeah, unfortunately.
That's what I always think of.
The
Donuts
one
and coffee.
scene where like, yeah, donuts and coffee. Ernie and the half-eaten donut when they're putting the wire on him. Yeah, I one thing that does stick out to me, and it's something that my brother Barry mentioned to me before I did this rewatch, as he pointed out, like to pay attention to the dialogue and how different the dialogue itself was from whatever else was on television at the time, which was again another thing to look at.
At the time, for sure, but also just Like,
in
versus this
general.
episode and a David Lynch episode, is different.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, but just like think about all the shit that Major Briggs says and the way he talks. Like, have you ever seen another character on TV talk like that before or since? I mean, but it's believable.
yeah, kind of. But it's like that on this episode, this finale, that episode in The Office, where they're all talking kind of in sync with each other. The way they talk about everything is so
Hmm.
unlike them in the rest of the other episodes that it's a little off-putting. Because it's like, I don't know. It's funny.
Yeah.
There's like definitely becomes this like, oh, I'm the director. Here's what we're gonna do, and this is how we're gonna do the scene. But it's cool because when you mention the fact that they did that in a minute, that's why
Hmm.
they had a beat count that they needed to get through these scenes. So they probably constructed this. It probably was dialogue was way different. It probably took a lot longer, but they had to whittle down the dialogue to a point where everyone kind of talks in a certain way to get it to a minute for the log
Yeah.
lady to
That's not
show up.
something, yeah.
And that's
That's
like
not
a
something that's all
wild
that easy to
concept.
do.
That's like a really fucking, why do that? Well,
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna do. Which is cool,
And then they
but then
took
it
that
changes.
concept and expanded it to a whole episode of television.
But they change.
Thanks, 24.
Well, yeah, but
Go Kiefer.
but that's
How
the
come you
fun
never
thing
see anybody taking a leak in that show, man?
because that takes time. It depends.
They do it when it's cut away to a different scene, right?
Commercial break.
Right. Oh, this character took a leak while Jack's daughter was fighting off that cougar.
Sweat his pants.
They're all in diapers.
I've never watched 24, so I couldn't actually really tell you.
I watched like the first two seasons, and I
Yeah.
think that's really all I needed.
Oh yeah.
It was interesting for the concept, but went a little too far.
Well, there we are. We did it.
Here we are, folks.
What was your biggest? Okay, this your 100 millionth watch through. Was there anything you actually took away that you never took away before, or has it just been the same? Just pretty much the same.
Really, just that realization of how little of the stuff that stuck with me represented of the series as a whole.
Right.
That was my biggest takeaway from this watch through is that look, my favorite parts of the series, the parts that embedded themselves into my mind and made me love it so much, realistically, it's like less than 10% of the screen time.
Right.
I mean, there are definitely still other aspects of it that I like. The character builds. I looked a lot more closely at the acting, and like I said, I reevaluated some of my more harsher judgments from the past. Um, but overall, I get the same feeling from the series. It makes me feel the same way, and that I find that comforting.
Right. No. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's TV or like visual art comfort food for me, despite the subject material. It's yeah, just the uniqueness of it when it happened. That was enough for it to just kind of like to catch my heart and keep it there.
Cool. Well, we did it.
Yeah. Finish this one off, but you know what, folks? We're not done yet.
Nope.
We do have some special stuff coming up for you, although it's going to be a few weeks. We're going to take a well-deserved rest and just decompress from Lynch's world from a little bit. Uh, oh, gosh. Oh, I'm going to have to start doing lozenges or gum or something while we record.
Jesus.
Getting that dry throat. So yeah, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back in early December with 2 episodes.
Pre-recorded. These won't be live.
Pre-recorded episodes. Yeah, these are not going to be live episodes and they're also not going to be recap episodes. These are going to be commentary / watch along experiences. So we'll see what we can do to get a couple of our silhouettes in front of the screen,
So it'll probably
or
be
a graphic that you can download so you can watch along Mystery Science Theater style.
Yeah, so we're gonna take the next 3 weeks off, basically, and then a weekend after Thanksgiving. Gabe and I are gonna record 2 of these episodes. One will be with Firewalk with me, and the other one is with what? What is the other?
The Missing Pieces,
The Missing Pieces,
which
and
is
then,
just the assembly of the cutscenes, but that's enough for like over an hour of material.
and then I'll release one of those probably December 4th, and then either 11th or 18th. I might space them out a little bit because they're gonna be longer, kind of comment. Probably around 2 hours. I think this is like long. This is almost 2 hours. I guess it doesn't really matter. But just to make sure there's just some content in December, and then we'll break for Christmas, and then back on. Well, January 1st is a Wednesday. I guess we're doing it January 1st.
Why don't we wait until the 8th?
Then maybe the 8th. So then the
Yeah.
8th. I'm not doing anything on the 1st. What do you got going on? Anyway, on the 8th, we will resume and hit the return straight on till however long that takes us.
Till Never Neverland, folks.
And then but yeah, that's kind of the plan. So if we're a little quiet, just go back through hit some episodes you missed or something.
We've got all kinds of material for you guys to mine now. We've been at it for a long, long time.
Yeah.
30 episodes up and at 'em. And then we've also, we've got some other stuff to explore. We've got those 2 Mark Frost novels that we can touch base on. The Secret History of Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks: The Final Dossier.
And then we have talked about doing Lost Highway just as a kind
Lost
of
Highway is another cinematic interlude.
kind of a companion episode, because I think it really reflects what the show is. A lot of what Twin Peaks is Lost Highway, in my opinion.
Yeah. Shares a lot of the same themes. And
then, once that's over, I don't know, we'll probably take a little hiatus and decide what we're going to do next. But
the sky's the limit.
We still got time.
If you got any ideas, feel free
yeah,
to share them. We'd love to hear from you.
Email us
If you
at
got,
this email address up here.
That we never check.
The Gabe never checked.
This one written there.
There's probably a
I
million
can't
emails.
remember the password, dude.
Oh, really? You just hit forgot password.
Yeah, no. I'm too fucking lazy for that shit.
All right, never mind. Hit us up in the chat sometime.
Hit us up in the chats. But yeah, we're glad you've gone on this journey with us, and we will definitely keep you informed for the upcoming schedule of releases.
I guess technically we're past halfway, but really we got like a lot to go. We got these two big movies, 18 episodes of The Return, and then possibly some books and another movie. So we kind of are halfway. Maybe we still got a long way to go. So
plenty of ground to cover, everybody, and we're glad you're covering it with us. And we hope you've had as much fun as we have doing it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna sign off for now.
Have a good holiday.
And
we're coming up and gonna come up on the holidays. Have a good holidays.
Let me have another drink of water here.
Hit us up if you're watching some Twin Peaks over the holidays.
That's right. And I do want to take a minute to say that we kind of live in some scary times right now, and Major Briggs's line of love not being enough kind of rings a little loud today, but we just want to let everybody know, people who are afraid, that you're seen, you're loved. We're still here. We're looking out for you, and we're going to do our best. We'll make sure nothing happens to you. We're still here. That sounds trite, I know. I'm a cishet white boy doing my best.
How cliche was that, Gabe? Jeez. No.
It was cliche as fuck, but it's just me trying to tell everybody I love you all. Be excellent to each other. And in these dark and trying times, let a smile be your umbrella.
Mm. Or just
Thanks,
sit
everybody,
there blank
for
as a
coming
fart.
We hope we've been able to put a smile on your faces tonight. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in about a month.
Night.
Take
Later.
care, everybody.